Hello, everyone, and welcome to another We Have a Cave Troll. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the message boards, and we also have,
I'm Alan Mackey, and I go by Orion on the message boards, and I'm the lead designer of the game.
as always, we've been here for a long time. We're looking forward to the Big 20 next year.
20 years. Yeah, that's
Well, and
crazy.
I've been working on this game with the exception of my break to go off into the big scary world of corporate America since 2003. So
You know what? They're saying I'm quiet, so I'm going to do something crazy.
you're going to start shouting.
Nope, I'm going to switch my
Oh,
mic. Give me two shakes of a lamb's tail.
Any better?
how does that sound, everyone? Beep, beep, beep.
Is that any better? Yeah, good.
I can hear you
Not.
perfectly fine. So,
All right, good. Good. I
alrighty.
mean, it should
Well,
be closer to me.
all right. Well, welcome everyone. Today's we have a cave troll. Our primary topic that we wanted to talk about today was the benefits of Bullroarer, and no, not the Hobbit that discovered and created the game of golf. We're talking about our or our public test server, um, which is up and running right now. In fact, with a focus on testing for the raid.
That's right. The raid is up and running, and I think people are in there right now. I tried to boost it a little more. Anything?
Well, I might be able to do some stuff on this end. I'm
I'm gonna
still
switch it.
figuring out everything, but I don't have much more boost I can give. Just have to enunciate.
Yeah, talking loud is hard for me, but that's okay. I can try to make it work.
Um,
Yeah, Bull Roar.
and we were
Testing.
thinking we'd do a little bit of Q&A too as part of this one, but focusing primarily on Bullroarer, kind of how it started, what its uses are for, and what both we get out of it and what you all get out of it as part of the Lotro experience. It has
I'm
not always been a thing. We have not always had it, but
yeah, I mean it's weird. I know a lot of people think that Bull Roar doesn't really go up until everything is in a done state. That's not necessarily true. We would love to be able to get Bull Roar out sooner, faster in a less than ready state, but there is a measure of playability that it has to have in order for it to be useful and viable to us, right? So
yeah,
we can't throw something out there that's not in a completable state because one, it looks really bad, and then two, we're not going to get as much really actionable uh, feedback on anything because we obviously haven't presented something that's in a more complete state that we probably are making adjustments to probably on the regular, right? Almost on the regular.
yeah.
So
It's well, and there's also this whole balance too of like what are the audiences for Bullroar, or how do we get people in to play it, and what value does it bring to the player community at large, like and to just us and the health of the game environment. If we open something up too soon, like Alan was saying, it we get flooded with bugs that are like, yeah, we know this isn't finished yet, we know. um, and then you also run into the issue of like the content experience. Like what do people think of with the spoilers, or do they just play it and then they're kind of done with it? Like those kinds of like questions and things that we need to balance with Bullroar are always a part of it. Which is why the epic story is never something that we release on Bullroar. It's
true.
always
Plus,
it's always
the
hidden.
yeah, and the epic is one of those things that we definitely don't want to out too soon, which is why, yeah, like Matt just said, it stays hidden.
I do think that our and there are a couple of questions already, asking, Broken Shield asks, why don't you keep Bullroarer open longer than you do? And Shmoo's saying that we still get bugs even with Bullroarers, and a lot of that is timing issues. I think Bullroarers are always at the end of a cycle, and that end of the cycle is always we're always coming in hot, right? Like we know when our launch dates are, we know what we're trying to hit, and there's only so much time between when we can feasibly have bull roars available for players to give us actionable feedback on and actually action on that feedback before we hit a certain delivery date. I think we've gotten better at being comfortable with pushing a date if we need to, but it's still that balancing act. Where is the value kind of thing?
Yeah, and there are all there's I don't want to say there's always a number of times a lot of bugs do slip through. Sometimes it's just a matter of we are under a really harsh deadline and we can't make the adjustments, or the decision is made that the bugs or the defect that was found is not terribly egregious and we can hold off until an immediate patch after. Like the whole stream of development is kind of awkward, and it's difficult to really explain how things happen. But let's kind of walk players through it, people through it for a little bit, right? When we say are doing a major release, like we have one upcoming, right? We have our U47 release coming up. Our Update 47 release requires us to change the way that we're working inside of our internal tools, right? We call it a branch. We branch out one version of the game for the next. And every time that we do that, it basically means that we shut off the capacity for us to do any changes to the previous branch, which means that our timing has to be pretty good. Because if we need to do a hotfix on, say, 46, by the time that 47 is going to be rolling out, we lock ourselves out of that depending on when the date of the branch is. Now, from a QA standpoint, they want to branch as early as possible because they want us to be fixing the bugs before everything can roll out. From a design standpoint, we still kind of want to branch earlier because we want to be able to start working on the new stuff without having to put in a whole bunch of things to hide the future.
I've been sitting on so much of that stuff right now.
I know, right? and then on top of that, when we do that kind of thing, sometimes we forget to remove those blocks, and maybe some content gets hidden for too long. So we all want that, but the reality of development is that sometimes it is safer because of the intricacy or the depth of the changes that are being made for one branch would be too detrimental or dangerous to merge from what you're currently working on into a live branch. So it's
and that's a difference too between merging and this has changed so much we might as well just hand fix it in what's going into live, and that has its own problems as well because you're now effectively maintaining two versions of one thing at the same time, which you don't really want to do. So Thangdrim asks, would you ever consider offering more incentives to participate on Bullroarer? As I feel the more testing, the better. It currently does not feel like many want to test, which I think is valid of them to feel that way. And then Imagor also said, try to gather people on test for a new raid. You can't gather a full raid because live servers tier 3 instances was released. That sort of thing as well. That there's definitely a competition for attention when Bullroarer goes live, and especially when it's timed up against other things, whether it's a festival or new tiers of instances unlocking, or just real life stuff, holidays and whatnot. It's always tricky to make something feel important enough on Bullroarer that it's going to take precedence over the other activities that might be happening in the game.
We got one of those coming up. Yeah, it's. I think the only time that we've really kind of gone out of our way to incentivize the testing on Bullroarer was recently, and that was when we were trying to test some of the updates that we had been making to performance. And the reason that we don't overly incentivize Bullroarer is kind of manifold. On the one hand, if we were to incentivize it, there would probably be right more people who would go in and actually test out some of the stuff that we're working on. But at the same time, the quality of that feedback may not be as good.
Yeah, I think critical mass is helpful for some things, but particularly in testing like instances, especially at higher tiers,
Yeah.
a critical mass at a tier 3 instance where you're trying to incentivize a lot of people who may not be raiders, but the incentive is enticing enough to come in, they may slam into that tier 3 test and bounce off it hard. And that has its own challenges and its own problems, where it's like they may just not be understanding the mechanics or may not have the gearing or skills to compete at that level. And so it's difficult to have something actionable come out of that kind of critical mass testing.
Yeah, the other thing is with the critical mass of Bullroarer is that it never really gets to the same level of what we see on a live server. We can't replicate 100%. We can't replicate the live server 100% on Bullroarer. It's just not possible. We don't have the same structure for the server backend. There's a lot of things that are different. So the best we can do is kind of find equivalent performance rather than direct performance. So it's not always a one-to-one. So really, it's more the quality testing than it is the quantity testing. So it's not that we want to incentivize people to go over to Bullroarer all the time. It's that we really want players who want to be there to test out the stuff and help us make sure that we have a better product are going in there to validate and help us with those changes.
So there are a few comments and questions about bugs that might be discovered in Bullroarer that find their way into live, and it might be useful to talk a little bit about kind of the pipeline of how bugs kind of move through the process. And just because something is seen in Bullroarer, and we even have this come up sometimes too in Palantir, depending on how it's reported, it may not become something that arrives at our plate to fix, or may not be something that makes sense to fix immediately, depending on what it is. I get a ton of Z fighting bugs. Unless it is like very egregious to the point of being distracting, I'm not likely going to try to fix a Z fighting bug and get it merged into live so that it can go out with the patch that it is initially introduced in, because that is a little bit of extra work for the risk of, okay, you merged this, but then what other things come with this merge?
Yeah, I mean, we both know that there have been times when something that seems very innocuous has ended up being terribly egregious, right?
Who knew that a giant rock could suddenly appear in the greenway?
Who knew? Or who ended up in a whoever thought that changing the position on a statue inside of an instance would break all of the links inside of in the instance and make it so that nothing works anymore, right? There are we have to weigh a lot of the changes that are very minor or that appear very minor or even average, right? We have a weighting system. We have to figure out which bugs really are necessary to fix before they go live. And I mean, I don't mind saying that we have a tiered system, a weighted system that says this is a blocker. This basically means you cannot play the game. This is
Yep.
a critical, where this is a critical path thing that if players can't finish this, it's going to impede progress or impede something else. Majors are, this is a big bug that's going to have a lot of impact and people are going to be upset. And then we drop off from there to average, which is this is going to look bad, or minors that, this is an annoyance, to trivial where it's just like, yeah, this would be nice to fix someday. And that's usually where typos come in and things like that. But typos are not always that way, because if we leave, say, a DNT or
Mm-hmm.
a horribly misspelled section, that's the kind of thing that we really want to address and fix early on.
I think too, like, so the way our bug submission process goes is, even if something is reported, it still comes internally. We have to regress and reproduce it internally to make sure that the QA team understands what the bug is, understands how they can make it happen again. And some of those bugs, super easy to reproduce. Go there, turn your camera this way, that way, observe the bug. Others are much more nuanced and require certain conditions that are much harder to achieve in a local environment compared to a production environment. And because of that, some of those bugs that are being reported may not be easily reproducible, which means that they may not turn around into a fix and then get published again for the next round of Bullroarer or to the live update. So it's not, I think and this is not to make it sound like an excuse, but our game is big. Our game is very, very big. And it is challenging sometimes to be able to reproduce some things because of how big it is and because of various systems interactions and hardware setups. Like there was one bug that I think the thread is still going on about this on the forums about weird rendering issues that I wasn't either really noticing when I would go to test it locally, or because it wasn't either bothering me in the same way, or the hardware that I was using is different than the hardware that the people reporting the issues was using, and because of that, like, I can't reproduce it. And so it's much harder to like make an issue that players see as very present and impactful make its way to something that can actually be fixed, because we still want to make sure that we understand why it's happening, how we can fix the issue, and if we can't get past that why it's happening hurdle, that just pushes out when the thing can actually be put to test and be put to live as fixed.
I think my kitten's over here somewhere. Yeah, no.
Next thing you know, you'll just have daggers in your calves. It'll no
Yeah,
problem.
and that'll be fun. She does like to climb me every once in a while. Imigor asked, what if we add our new instances to the live servers and just enable or disable them from Instance Finder? That would be really bad. Enabling them suddenly, if something were to be so broken and it hadn't previously gone to Bullroarer or through Palantir, if it was a game crashing bug of some kind, we wouldn't know it until we did it on live, and that's not good. We don't ever want to do anything like that. We make sure that we don't have any true game crashing bugs. Server side game crashing bugs is before we ever push anything out, because that's really hard for us to recover from. So we would never want to do anything like that.
I think too, there's also one of the challenges with Bullroarer, and I'm seeing some comments in there that kind of dovetail into this, is speaking about incentives and whatnot. I can see too where there is concern about going on to Bull, like, what is the value for me? Why do I want to run this instance here and get nothing for it versus just waiting for it to come to live and then running it on live and spending my time on that? And like that is fair. Like, I think we've talked before about how time is a premium, especially as you get older and you have family, you have kids, you have work and whatnot. So you have to make that decision about what do I spend my time on? Do I spend my time on playing instances with friends that I'm know my character is going to be rewarded on, or checking out something new that I'm not sure what state it's going to be in at the point that I check it out.
And sometimes what we've found, and this is not to say this is always the case, but sometimes what we found is that players that do spend time on Bullroarer, specifically looking at instances and raids, are actually looking there so that they can be ahead of others when the lead the charge stuff starts to happen. Like tier 3 just turned on, right? So tier 3 in the instances is on now, which means that there are a bunch of people trying to get to lead the charge titles, and testing on Bullroarer gives you that minor leg up, right? So you can kind of see where things are going to go and how difficult they're going to be, and you might be able to come up with some strategies that will help you out early on. So I mean that there is some minor incentive there. It's not necessarily for everyone, but that is one of the pieces of incentive that we know some players utilize.
It's an incentive for a certain kind of metagame
Yeah.
that some players engage with, and it's not necessarily the kind of game that everyone wants to play, which is part of what can make Bullroarer difficult to incentivize as well. Because there's those people that are playing, their incentive is the knowledge. That is the reward they're getting out of it. Your calves are safe.
I just had to pick her up and say hi. She was in here. Let's see. Any other questions on here?
There's a question from Thangdrim about legendary items and traceries. Would a system where you could
for another in the same tier? That's not really where we want to go with that. There are long-term plans to get away from what we currently have, but they are really long-term plans. They're not anything that's going to come to fruition anytime in the near future. Sadly.
I mean that's the challenge too with a lot of some of what we do is that they are not things that players are going to see for several months, if not like a year or two. And in relation to Bullroarer, it's hard to like put some of that stuff out there in a like prototype format because it's hard to explain that something is a prototype and should not be taken as just an ideation, not a implementation.
Yep. And it has been really difficult for us to get a UI engineer in here to help us out with that kind of stuff, sadly. But now we've got one.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, so like, and I think one of the other benefits of Bullroarer is it can act as an event space sometimes if we need it to.
But you've dropped like Balrogs on people's heads before?
I've never dropped Well, maybe I have. I think Jerry has done that more than I have. But
you've played hide and seek.
I did hide and seek when we were testing the 64-bit server spaces. I did a hide and seek game throughout the world, which we had a lot of people running around doing. I think at the same time, that's when Jerry was dropping Balrogs on Breetown at the same time too, because we just wanted to see how we could break things. And I think that's one of the, at least during that era of development, that was one of the really useful things for Bullroarer was we put it up on this new hardware and we were just seeing what we could do to it until it fell over.
Yeah.
Pal says, I volunteer for getting a Balrog dropped on my head, please. You think you want that, but do you really?
You don't. It's uncomfortable. It hurts. We can start taking some of these questions.
Go for it.
Any update regarding the deed log change? Yeah. So the deed log is not the deed log with the new variation that was introduced last year is still on hold. There's still some significant bugs that we would need to address before we can put it out. And we want to make sure that the next time we release anything like that, it serves what it's supposed to serve. There was enough negativity around the overall look and feel and functionality that I think we may have missed the mark on that more than we had wanted to. So we want to take a step back, make sure that we approach it the right way next time, get a little more input before we re-release it and at some point in the future. Now, when that happens, we don't really know.
The Forest Gospel asks, will the housing hooks get updated? This may have been asked, but I feel like Lindleby hooks are janky. Plus, having the giant fire pit hook in the small Lindleby homes is incredibly wasteful. So I have a task on my plate that I will hopefully get in, probably not for 47, but 48, because my plate is pretty full as it is right now, but to change the visual appearance of the fire pit hooks. And I may just merge that hook type into furniture, just in general, because it already accepts basically everything else, so there's not really a reason for it to exist in the size as it is, outside to like suggest a space that could be filled with it. So that's on my plate to coincide along with the release of Rivendell housing. As far as the hooks in Lindleby being janky, I would need a little bit more information about location and what you're trying to do with those hooks to be able to speak specifically to any jank that might be occurring, because with the exception of the two Chase properties, most of the hooks in that neighborhood are normal hooks. So if there are bugs, file bugs. Get them into our process so that we can attempt to reproduce those bugs internally and then effectuate a fix on those bugs. And that goes for everything, not just housing hooks.
Yep. So Nightmind asked about the UI update and the mouse size changing. So the 4K changes that went in for the UI are part of a long-term strategy that we have to kind of continue to push through. There is we're in the process right now of trying to get what ended up getting a little broken yesterday out as soon as we can. So we're discussing this ironically while I'm on this stream right now in the back end, figuring out exactly what the time is going to be. It looks like it will be sometime next week that we'll back out some of those changes. No guarantee that that's happening. It's just that's what we're looking at right now. As far as like when the fixes will come in for very specific things that are happening, that's going to be ongoing as we continue with releases. The release schedule is going to speed up a little bit and kind of compress for a period of time, because there are a number of things that we're doing and a number of changes that are coming in that need to be updated and need to be pushed out and need to be integrated quicker than usual. So expect that a lot of the changes for 4K are going to just continue throughout the year as we continue to try to get the game back up to the truly modern standard of UI.
Ponton Finbury asks, is it hard to keep future stuff off live servers? We know that some stuff makes it live that was not ready, such as finding unreleased future region or homesteads. Yeah, I think there's some portions of it that we are comfortable with going live. There are others that we hold off on checking in things to kind of keep them in our pocket and keep them secret. And there are others where we have to be super generic in how we name and structure things in order to keep from spoiling it too soon, because there is, there I guess are tiers, right? Like there's some stuff where we're kind of okay with it. Oh, hey, off in the distance you saw a mountain change or something appeared that you can't get to yet, but if you're familiar with the area, you can see what's going on. There's stuff that if it goes in our smaller community of data sniffers will immediately find and then start talking about, which has its own problems. It's great because people are excited, and if they weren't excited, they wouldn't be looking for that sort of stuff. But it can also tread into spoiler territory, or players start getting hyped up and start setting expectations for things that may not be the right expectations for them to set about things. And so we try to be careful about what things we put in super early states, knowing that there are those people that will like go through the data and find that stuff. This happens with landscape stuff, it happens with items, it happens with quests. It's all that sort of stuff in there. Like, and it is hard. The more savvy our player base gets, the harder it is to hide some of those things without just flat out putting in stuff that's misdirection.
Yep. Y'all getting really good at snooping over the past several years. I mean, you were already good at it back in 2000 when we were working on AC, so it's not like
I
you haven't been good at it all along.
I put in chainmail bikini icons in Asheron's Call with
Yep.
the pure intention of just inciting people who were going through our DAT files and looking for icons for spoilers. I think I also put in a series of icons that basically said, "Why are you looking at this?"
I'm gonna hit a few of these
Go for
questions
it.
in here real fast, Matt. Any plans on making Tier 3 of the new raid more accessible than it were? It was only completable by a fraction of the community. So Tier 3 is now the hardest level, so it's going to be hard. That doesn't mean that it will be difficult, because we know that Utikbur had its own issues when it came out. It's just going to be hard, because that's what Tier 3 is now. Can I comment on the Guardian changes? So the Guardian changes that were put in, I know that people don't agree with the removal of the immediates, but the immediates are not something that we want to keep around in the game, and we did make a decision mid last year that we were going to start removing a lot of the utility that is inherent to different classes, especially the DPS lines, from the DPS line. And as a result, some of the utility did go away. I did already say that we're going to be taking a look at the animation speeds, because the animations are definitely too slow on some of the Guardian skills, and the work on the Guardian, the Red Line Guardian specifically, Kingblade, not 100% yet. I'm looking at trying to get more of that stuff done in an update in the future, and there are some changes that I would also like to make the Blue Line. As far as Orcrist is concerned, and why it's not the things that are being done to adjust the server there. Orcrist right now is still at a point where it is serving potentially too many people at a time. The problem that we have with Orcrist is that it's our largest server, and it's the one that runs into the queue most often. There are constant monitors on our servers now to see what they're doing from a performance aspect. And we know that there are times when there are some issues, and we're looking at what's really causing those. Overall, and I know this is not what everyone wants to hear, but overall the server performances have been getting better. We're continuing to work on it and continuing to focus on the other changes that need to happen in order to make the server performance even better than that. I guess I should go to the next one too, huh?
If you want, go for it.
No new crafting
Just bullet
events.
them. Boom, boom, boom.
No updates for Li or Virtues. There are some minor updates for Virtues. It's just one minor thing that's going in. No new crafting events right now. That doesn't mean that won't change in the future.
Those are always kind of like for
They're
me,
hit or
when I
miss.
decide to magic up a new neighborhood, the crafting events are kind of like I got a little bit of time.
They're
We
the
do
one
have
thing that I do
we
when I
we
have
do
that spare
have
time.
we do have updates to festivals coming up, so that's
Yes.
not necessarily serving that same niche, but similar.
there are definitely, I mean, there are definitely plans out there for more craft events in the future, but there's nothing that I can commit to right now because it's just not something that's on the immediate horizon. And I think we might be down to okay, so there's the sandal question. I don't think we're getting sandals.
I mean, where we're
I think we're
going
getting sandals.
over the
Don't talk
next
about
like
that. Well,
we don't
we
really
said
want to wear
north.
you don't want to wear sandals there,
No,
right?
it's
Like
not a sandal friendly place.
it would not be you'd get like stuff in them and
Yeah,
it would hurt and like
not
un-
a sandal friendly place.
unless they were hiking sandals because I go hiking with hiking sandals all the time, but
Got my Tivas, yeah.
yeah. um Talarian says, could you comment on the removal of several tasks from the neighborhood task boards? Will the task boards from the new region be included in neighborhood task boards in the future? I can't comment specifically about the removal of tasks. I'm unfamiliar with that. It could have just been a cleanup task that someone had done and things got cleaned up. As far as the inclusion of current cap tasks in the neighborhood boards, those will get there eventually. Um, we don't typically put those in neighborhoods when the expansion pack launches because we want you to go to the places where the expansion pack is happening, rather than you know sticking around in older areas.
Look, Matt,
Just
somebody just
admit
asked
it.
if Rivendell housing is confirmed. Didn't we
Rivendell
confirm
housing's
that
been
like a month
confirmed.
ago?
Well, for
It's definitely been confirmed.
3 years, it's been confirmed. That's when we said that that would be the next one.
Yeah, but we actually gave a timeline now too.
Region, which we need to do previews on as well, and my continuing series on the rivers of Middle Earth. So it's a matter of figuring out when all of those happen. But Rivendell housing, that stream will be one of them, and
Mm-hmm.
and it will be coming out this year. So Pontin Finbury says hobbits have tough feet. I don't know how Frodo and Sam did it barefoot. Yeah, but there's a difference between walking around barefoot and walking outside and like getting a stone stuck in between the bottom of a sandal and your foot, right? Like it's a different kind of pain and experience. It's like stepping on a Lego.
Very much so. There's no more questions.
Let's see. Would be really funny if that area was completely unrelated to a Moria alternative. One of these days, I'll get to I'll get to build that.
You mean get to?
Let's see. Forest Gospel says, I know we got some desert themed cosmetics, and I think a few were missed that could have been winners. Probably talking about things like the sandals and whatnot. Uh, I mean, I wore sandals a lot in Morocco and had no issue, they say. Um, Hirok asks, about Bullroarer, why is the tavern the way it is? Why not have all the old gear on one NPC? And why are so many items not free in the tavern? The tavern it is primarily a QA testing space that happens to be useful for Bullroarer, I would say more so than anything. And part of testing is pricing. So if things cost a certain thing, we want to, if we are intending to simulate a acquisition process for those things, it's important that the prices on things exist.
There's a question about can we have some better, deeper tutorial about stuff like virtues Li essences and put them into the game. Some, I mean, I don't know. I had just come back just after Li2 was done, so we may not have done a great job of reintroducing the way that legendary items work at that point. There was a question about collections, right? So uh, right now, there's the allies don't tie into collections. That doesn't mean we wouldn't like that. But as far as virtues and essences, and that some of those are our tooltip system does not do a great. I shouldn't say our tooltip. Our tooltip and our tutorial hint systems don't do a great job of explaining all of that. How would we better? How would we better actually add that to the game and make it into quest tutorials? It's something we could potentially look at, but it's also something that would not be very high on the whiteboard at this point, because it is a 19-year-old game, and a lot of those systems have been around for 17 plus years of that timeline. So it's not, they aren't things that we would really need or expect to revisit often or in the near future. Doesn't mean we won't, especially if we get an influx of new players, which would potentially drive that. If that is something that's necessary for Kins, then maybe that is something we could take a look at. But it's not one of those things that's really high on our board right now. Is the level scaling for open world still planned? Yes. Yes. So the real answer is yes. The timing answer is we don't know, because of the depth that it actually hits across the game. And I know I've explained this before. I'll try to explain it again. The age of the game and the interlaced systems that exist, and how pulling on one thread could easily upset the entire game, makes something like a level scaling up or down very difficult. And a lot of it is just because of how many integrated systems there are. We can look at Li, we can look at virtues as great ways to actually say this. Now, it seems like it should be simple to just say your virtues only function up to this level. On the surface, yeah, that's true. But LIs, if you are wielding an LI, what do we do with you if you drop down to level 20 where an LI does not exist? Do we just make it that you don't get any of the benefits of the bonuses that are associated with the LI, and you only get the DPS variant? And how do we restore that? There's a lot of questions that go into that, and a lot of the testing that would have to go into that makes it very difficult. It doesn't mean that we're not still looking at it and we don't want to do it. We do, because we think it's actually something that will help older players and newer players be able to get together more often. It's just, it's very hard, and it's one of those things that we are taking our time to get right.
You know, there's a reason why many of our older instances don't scale. And player scaling up and scaling down is an additional layer of complexity on top of that, beyond just like what level is our mobs, what level is treasure. Now you're talking about like what level can you wield this? What skills do you have? How powerful are those skills? Like all of that stuff. It is not simply linear. It's not just looking at your level and making your level smaller. Because each level has also some breadth to it. So, what instance of Kingdoms of Harad do you enjoy the most? I know the raid is not there yet, but let's say it already up and running. So, of them, which one did you like the most?
Hard to say.
I think there was certainly some shuffling around that happened in the development processes for all of the instances that
Yeah.
made it hard to really like dive into any one of them from a development standpoint and feel like there was something that I really fell in love with as far as the what it looks like and what it feels like, because I think I'd get to work on a space a little bit here and then I'd have to go bounce off into some other spot, whether it's on landscape or something in the future, and so it was hard to really really connect with any of the individual spaces I worked on because of that. Since we were all pretty spread out, at least from the world team, we were all pretty spread out over a multitude of things.
Yeah, we were pretty spread out too. I don't know.
I mean, my favorite
It's a tough call.
my favorite dungeon-like experiences in Kingdom of Arad is I had a lot of fun building the Temamir stuff, the Quelling House, and Jiret Manesh. Those aren't the instance spaces, but I think those were the most interesting ones for me to build, because I could play a little bit more with the structures in those spaces. I think the spaces I was working on, I built the raid and the was it the Wailing Fortress, I think is what it was eventually called.
Wailing Hold.
The Ordic, yeah.
It's the Wailing Hold. It's Wailing Hold, the caverns of Hurricana, and Falling Palace. Falling Palace is probably my favorite, just because the fights are unique and very fun.
And visually, I think it is a really awesome looking space. I think for the raid and the Wailing Hole, both of them, my attention was more focused on some of the new construction methods that we were talking about. And so I was more focused on the technical component of those spaces than, the look and feel, I guess, at the end of the day. Still trying to make them all look good, but I think the technical challenge was where a lot of my brain process went into those spaces.
Yeah, I just think that the boss fights in the palace are really well constructed, and they're different from one another. I think it makes it really solid. Really solid. It's a good instance. I think I can say that because I didn't have a hand in it this time, so that's good. What is our plan with? Oh wait, there's more. Okay, so yeah, let's go to that one. Any plans with the new 50 server? A new 50 server with no 9 event and having Etmores. I can't talk about the next legendary server yet. We have plans, but I cannot talk about it yet. Do we have plans for Mordor and Angmar? Yes, there are plans for Mordor and Angmar. It will be. I mean, obviously, we've released some of the plans for what will happen to it over the course of the year. I know for update 48, I think that's when those are going in. It might be 47. Actually, I might have actually got those in for 47. There's some new rewards that are associated with the Veil of the Nine event that you'll be able to get only there. They're exclusive to those servers. But yeah, there's definitely more planned for Angmar and Mordor, and then when we open up a new legendary server, there'll be more planned for that too.
I think the comment about having the Etmores on a legendary world, I think that kind of speaks a little bit to the level scaling stuff too, because monster players are balanced at level cap, correct?
It's not even that. No, it's worse. It's worse. So that there's no. The way that Monster Player was created, there is no way to actually scale a monster player to the level of the server, because it's all data driven on the back end. So there's no way for us to drive that right now through some kind of a property that would change them out. So whenever we make an alteration to the files that are associated with the monster play area, they are just automatically bumped up to the next level, which means that they are maximum tier for that level is the second that the level band expands. There's no other way to do it right now, and that's why the Etmors has had to have been turned off for every legendary server that we've done. Whether or not that will stay the case is an unknown, but right now there's no direct line to opening that up on a legendary server.
What is the goal for low-level areas? Are there guidelines set to introduce them, or are they still on when there's no other content to fill? I'm not sure I understand that question.
Yeah, I don't understand that question.
If you can provide a little bit more clarity, I'm happy. I'm happy to talk about low-level areas and the value they serve, but I'm not sure if that means in a level scaling world, if it means on a legendary world, if it just means in general. Yeah. Are we getting another stat squish soon? We've reached 1 million morale already.
So the answer to that is
Complex.
yeah, it's very complex. So one of the goals that we have certainly for this year is to prepare for the inevitability that something has to change there. Because of the exponential way that everything grows inside of the game, damage, health, power, so on and so forth, it makes it very untenable as we move forward. And it also makes it really cumbersome and difficult for us to translate inside of the game in real time. So there are plans right now to address that moving forward because it is a problem that needs to be addressed. Does that mean that it will end up being a stat squish, or will it be something different? There's a lot of discussions going on around it right now that will be ironed out, and we'll have a better answer for you likely at the end of the year to explain really what's going to be going on.
I think we often come up against that sort of thing too, where it's just like we know we want to keep growing the game, but we also know those numbers keep getting bigger.
Yep.
And we got to figure out a way to address it. But it requires thought and time
and effort and work and testing. Lots of changes that were halos that you did not expect.
All right, so Herock attempted to clarify. He said, "You said before that low-level areas like the Yondershire will come when there's time to do them, but a lot of players have been asking about them. So my question is more: does SSG want to add one each X number of years, or is it still something there's time to focus on?" So yeah, that I think speaks to the fill in the gaps, filling in level progression through regions throughout the game where we have maybe only one or two regions servicing a certain level band. I think there's a lot of value in that. The challenge is finding the time to introduce those sorts of things. I think with the before the shadow year, we leaned too heavy in that one direction, and we've swung back the other way as a course correction. And I think those lower level areas were very much us kind of experimenting with what the reception to a non-cap region would be.
No.
I know that there are a lot of people that are interested in something like a Moria alternative or a Rohan alternative, because there is not a lot of branches around those level breaks. And I would love us to do more of those, but it's just a matter of us finding the right time in our schedules to do those things.
Finding the right story bits, finding the right hooks, finding the real impetus behind doing that. We definitely, I don't mind saying that before we really dove into what we're doing this year, we had a completely different plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we were planning on going to a completely different area of the world. There was there was a very clear direction that we wanted to go, and then we realized this might not be the right time for that.
Was that area
So
including sandals?
no, there were no sandals.
Oh, no sandals there.
There,
Okay.
there, there were no sandals. Um, but yeah, we are constantly trying to figure out how the puzzle pieces fit into the overall puzzle, and what we're working on for this year is actually leaning heavily into the fact that a lot of players have, been tipping their hand that, hey, what's going on up north? Can we kind of go back there? So we're interested in getting back to that.
Yeah, I would say our plans for this year scratch that revisit of an or yeah, I would say a
An
revisit of
underserved, going back to an underserved area.
yeah. Underserved is better than revisit because revisit implies we'll be doing something like King's Gondor, which is not at all
No, that's
what
been
we're
visited.
planning.
That's been visited a lot.
So we're looking at expanding on
Yes,
potentially. Let's see.
I'm excited
How
about it. That's all I know.
how much work would it be to retroactively add a deed to an older region, like for example a deed for all different warbrands in Eastern and Western Rohan? You could ever consider adding something like that. I mean, technically, not hard. Um, Depending on how those deeds might interact with other deeds, that becomes tricky because we wouldn't want to invalidate progress that people have made and potentially have already like completed deeds that then become invalidated because we've added new things, or they have to redo work because they've added. So it's like we wouldn't expand on the number of like if there was already like a rare monster killer deed, we wouldn't add new rare monsters to that deed. We would make a new one, that sort of thing.
I think the easiest way for me to explain this is that when we, I'm sure a lot of folks remember the Iron Stomach deed, right? For eating the brie cheese. Uh, when I put in the new version of that, I couldn't just add that to the existing deed. I had to create a new deed that looked for the brie cheese being eaten and the new item being eaten in order to be able to put the new deed in, because you can't just add something to an existing deed if it's something that players may have already done. So there needs to be something else that would re-trigger it, that wouldn't have to look through everything again. And that's
Yeah.
why we basically are very careful and cautious about doing things like that. Is
Yeah,
there
it's like
talk about a new class?
we would never add like new horses to what was the World Explorer. I think it was the World Explorer deed, or the or new reputations was the World Explorer, or the one where you have to like ride X number of goat mounts. Like nothing would ever be added to those because people have already completed them. Um,
I just have to say pumpernickel. The players know. It's okay. I said pumpernickel.
you said pumpernickel. Alrighty. Well, we are almost at our time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in relation to Bullroarer or general Q&A before we head out, Alan?
I will say that whether or not you want to believe it, Bullroarer feedback, Bullroarer testing, all of that is really helpful to us. It may not seem that we respond in a way that makes everyone happy all the time, but it is invaluable feedback that we get. It really is.
Mm. Yeah, we only have so much time in our day to address bugs, and we know that everyone has at least one bug that really bugs them, but it's always hard to fix everything and make everyone happy. And we're doing our best. I think Bullroar helps us a lot, and I think too the Bullroar helps us see what players are excited about, what they want to talk about. You know, it's always interesting to me looking at our feedback threads and channels, and you look at the title for that, and you go in expecting one kind of conversation, and you have players that have really veered off into a completely different kind of conversation about that topic that you weren't expecting. And that's not a bad thing. That's just like, it's always nice to have those little bits of surprise
Oh yeah,
when you're
definitely.
looking at feedback.
Definitely. Sometimes they come up with something you didn't even think about, which is great.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out, asking your questions, listening to us just kind of ramble on about our thoughts and ideas and our Bullroarer. So, hope everyone has a great rest of your afternoon. Everyone who is in the northern hemisphere buried under snow is staying warm, and we'll talk to you all next month.
See you in a month.